Hey guys, we're going to try something a little different today. We're actually going to talk to people who know what they're talking about, which is always a nice change. We've had a lot of questions since we've started doing the videos post-virus shenanigans, and we thought we'd sit down and answer as many of them as possible.
Hey guys, so I'm Jesse. You might have seen me, obviously a rider on Nero Continental. I'm also a qualified cycling coach. I have a Bachelor of Exercise and Sport Science. I've been coaching for about 6 years, first in rowing, obviously now in cycling. I also work for Today's Plan training website, so I have my eyes over a fair bit of data and sort of keep myself up to date from that side of things.
Hey guys, I'm Danny. I'm a cycling coach as well. I've also got a degree in exercise physiology. I've been coaching for probably 4 or 5 years now, and I did used to be a rider back in the days of Nero racing back in the day.
No, SU Velo racing.
Oh, yeah,
SU Velo racing. Yeah, way back.
And hey guys, Dan. I've been coaching for 6-7 years. Yeah, I'm a physio by trade, but always had more of an interest in the exercise science stuff. So since moved down to Adelaide and been doing some stuff with the training and trying to race with the Australian paracycling team.
We thought the guys might maybe be able to share a few tips, like mental tips, physical tips on what we can kind of do during this period.
Well, before we even get into that, I mean, there's people have left a few comments saying, should we even be riding outside at all? Sort of the argument behind that would be that hospitals, should you crash, hospitals are already overloaded, as are medical staff. So is it irresponsible to even be riding outside at all, let alone getting into what training you should be doing?
If we look at South Australia, for example, so we have less, I think it was 38 cases last time I saw, and 95% I think of those are mild cases. So we've maybe got 2 non-mild cases. That's maybe 2 people in hospital. So it's no real strain on the medical system at all at the moment in South Australia. As we are talking currently on the 20th of March at 5 p.m, there is absolutely no issue riding outside with just the pure statistics of the load on the medical system. That may change in coming times.
For us here in the UK, I mean, obviously people talk about that we're, I don't know, a week or so behind where Italy and Spain are at the moment. One of my friends over here, his partner works as a doctor in a hospital in London. And they, like a week ago when I last chatted to him, they were having 8-hour waits in emergency. She pronounced 2 people dead from coronavirus. So it's one of those things that you do. It's a really fast moving situation. So you just have to kind of be a little bit aware of that, I think. In terms of transmission, if you're keeping your distance, riding in small groups, maybe not parking up at cafes like you normally would, transmission wise, riding's probably okay. And that's certainly the guidance from the government over here. But yeah, the load on the healthcare system, I guess, is just something that's evolving.
To think that you wouldn't be riding outside at the moment because of the very small chance you may crash and then end up in such a state that you need to be hospitalised, and then that may take up a bed, I think that's a very big stretch.
And just from a personal point of view, I don't like training inside that much. I'm going to use this period as much as I can to get outside and do big Ks, some base Ks, because I fully believe we're going to end up in isolation at some point and not allowed outside of the house. So I'm going to be personally making the most of being able to get outside and ride my bike outside.
So we just recently released a blog post, linked in the video description, sort of around immune system health and what you can do kind of at the moment. I guess one of the big things with immunity is, in general, being fit and exercise is good for your immune system. But obviously where that may be an issue is if you're overdoing it. So if you are massively increasing your training load, if you're doing really like a lot of back-to-back sessions that you're not used to doing, that sort of thing, that's where you might end up sort of compromising your immune system.
If you actually look at the research, when exercise is bad for you, it's not just doing exercise. Just doing exercise is fine. And if you keep doing similar to what you've been doing in the past, it doesn't hamper your immune system too much. It's when you do things that are significantly different from what you've done in the past. And so I think that's what Danny was really trying to say, is that we just don't want to do things crazy different to what we've done in the past. Don't want to do massive amounts of load or anything like that, but keep training.
Why am I still riding my bike? Because there's no racing. So what can I be doing? What should I be doing mentally and physically at this point?
So for me, for this, it's not a what can or what should I be doing. Like, well, there is that, but there's also a step back is like, why do it now? And that's what a lot of people are asking. There's no racing now. Why do I need to train now? And like the reality is that what you do now will set you up for what happens in the second half of the season. If you have a month off now, it's going to take you a few months to get back to just where you are now, let alone make any improvements towards the end of the season. So
if you've had a big cyclocross season and you come in to sort of hit the spring races really hard and you've been consistently training for the last sort of 8-9 months, maybe now is not a bad time to take a step back. But yeah, like you said, if you haven't had a big consistent training load, then there's no real reason to kind of take your foot off the pedal and sit back unless it's something you really want to do.
There does need to be a bit of consideration with it though. If you're someone who's big into racing and you've got goals in the second half of the year, you can't just continue on as you would have if the racing was continuing. I think that's not smart.
Okay, this is all, I suppose, still in the context of not knowing when things are happening. We understand that, right? But what I've seen quite a few people posting on their social media is like, oh, and here's my chance to do another base. Set a base period.
In general, I'm going to think for most people, there is definitely some merit to that. There's no point continuing on with your training as you had planned where there was racing on. So I think definitely if, just real basic, if you're looking at your intensity and your training as sort of a pyramid with the higher end, top end stuff at the top and your base stuff at the bottom, you definitely want to be shifting your training further down that pyramid for the next 1, 2, 3 months as there's no racing on. There's no point continuing to work on that top end if you're not going to get to use it. So definitely I think there's some merit to that. People that are shifting more towards the lower end of the pyramid, working more on the lower intensities, working on some weaknesses, possibly off the bike stuff, lower aerobic level, there's definitely some merit to that with the guise of giving yourself a bit of a relaxing period, not being too stressed with your training.
There's a lot of people, like Jesse was saying, that, don't have maybe racing goals coming up. There's a lot of people who don't race. So it's about kind of reassessing what your goal is and then designing the training program around that.
With no racing, there's no real need to do any peaking efforts or anything like that. You don't want to be peaking now. So, you can never have too much base. Base is the foundation that you put the rest of the training on. So having more of that is only going to be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we can go on about what's the perfect intensity to be riding at, what phase should you go into. But at the end of the day, like in this period where there's no racing on, it's good. You can kind of just pick and do what you enjoy and get through the next 1 to 3 months, at least keeping the legs ticking over and maintaining some fitness.
So I don't think you should just be going out and doing slot miles. Yeah, you can go out and enjoy yourself, but just doing slot miles, it's a waste of training. So there's always something you can do. So as you talked about in the blog the other day, instead of just doing slot miles where you're riding around at zone 1, at least ride around at zone 2. So you're getting some endurance benefits out of it and doing something out of it. This is a good chance to make some gains, not just riding around for the sake of riding around, but to actually improve. So there's a whole list of things that you can do, but just basic things like maybe some higher strength efforts, so lower gears, or the other way around, some higher gears, some higher cadence stuff, maybe in saddle sprint work, some out of the saddle work, see if you can stay out of the saddle up a climb. The list is really kind of endless of what you can do. You could say you could try, working on your descending and stuff, but I wouldn't do that with what we've talked about with ending up in hospital. Doing some efforts here and there is definitely not going to be a bad thing, and you can still make gains in this period. You don't just need to maintain.
It's a good time to maybe not get in the gym per se, because it's probably a relatively high risk environment for transmission.
Wouldn't say me.
But there's plenty of stuff that you can do at home. I mean, there's thousands of YouTube channels with loads of great sort of home strength exercises that you can do. Or if you've got a coach, you can ask them or us for some home training ideas. But there's plenty of good stuff.
Look, something I've discussed with some of my riders, and I know I've spoken with Dan about this personally, and he sort of agrees with this, is it's actually a really good time to start thinking about a bit of weight loss if that's something that you need. Can be a bit of a contentious topic because of unhealthy eating patterns and things like that in the cycling community. But if we can be smart about it, if you need to lose a bit of weight, now is a really good time to do it. for a few reasons. Firstly, you might be more likely to be working from home, so your diet and your preparation can be a lot more controlled. And also, you're not worried about doing massive hard rides or fueling up for races and things like that. So it is a time when you can be a bit smarter about what you're eating. Shed a few kilos now when you don't have much racing on to set yourself up for when the racing starts again. Because some people leave their weight loss until it's the key part of the season when they want to be racing. But actually, I generally recommend start early, get down to roughly what you want to be racing at, do it really sustainably and in a long period of time, and then just maintain that.
Generally, don't aim for too much more than 500 grams a week. Like if you're losing more than that, you're probably losing too much. Be smart about it. Just make consistent, good food choices. Everyone really does pretty much know what these are, but cutting out the processed stuff, eating more whole foods. Base periods are really good to do it because you've also got those endurance kilometres which are burning more calories than what you would in sort of a short 1 hour high intense thing. But be smart about it. Don't lose too much. Monitor how much you're losing. If you're losing too much, readjust how you're eating and go from there.
If you're kind of switching off from, if you're used to training really intensely and you're sort of highly strung mentally in terms of your purely training, in terms of peak powers and always looking for power increases, it can be good to just divert that into a different way of thinking. So you're still putting effort into your training, progressing as a rider, but it's not purely from a power perspective. So it can be a nice mental break as well for a couple of months just to let yourself off the hook with the whole power side of things, which riders can get caught up in.
I guess the context around that is if you're currently running 5% body fat and you're super lean, now is probably not the time to be thinking about weight loss, just because the long-term sort of low energy availability is not great for your immune system. But if you are kind of, a normal-sized human, definitely something to think about.
Yeah, look, one of the other questions that we were asked, guys, was specifically about the guys in the team and maybe kind of what they are doing over the next sort of month, and hopefully we'll get them individually talking about that after we bully them enough online to post about it.
Yeah, it's actually a lot harder for the team guys because if you're just sort of riding, doing a bit of racing, you can kind of be a bit relaxed with how you're going. But with the team guys, they've got UCI calendar, some UCI races to do, NRS stuff, which we don't know when it's going to start up again. So they're basically just, as everyone is, sort of just in limbo at the moment. Yeah, most of the guys are having a mini off season now. It could be 3 or 4 months before they're racing again. So Jay, as an example, came off a really big summer. He trained really hard for Nationals and Sun Tour. Now he's basically having a mini off season and will rebuild again after that. Yeah, so for him and for myself as well, it's pretty devastating. Like we had a lot of big goals for our year. We're in this month and the next couple of months. So yeah, to basically just have the virus smash through that, it sucks. But all you can do is just plan ahead and be smart about it. And Jay's doing that. He's not sort of whinging about it. He was planning to train for the Oceania road race and TT, but he hasn't whinged about that. He's just gone, all right, I'm going to be smart about it. He started with his coach and he's just having a mini off season, and then we'll rebuild again. Hopefully for later in the year when the stuff comes back on.
I mean, you look at Dylan. Dylan's going to Bright. He's just going to go to Bright for as long as he can and ride his bike. No structure particularly about it, but of course,
I think you'll see that from a lot of guys on teams. It ought to be, let's get through the next 1 or 2 months, as I said, bottom of the pyramid, and then once these race dates start coming out, you'll see a lot of guys probably traveling and doing mini camps and things like that, like you'd see for the pro guys. In December and January, there'll be a lot of domestic guys doing that as well, because I definitely could see Jay, Dylan, even myself looking to do something like that, like a mini camp sort of thing, even if you were doing it from home.
Dan, you're down in Adelaide. Have you heard what's the chat obviously around the Olympics, the track team, all that kind of stuff? Are they're just pressing on as if nothing's happened, or?
So, their only choice is to assume that the Olympics is going to go ahead and keep working towards the Olympics. So at the moment, they aren't in a particularly specialist phase. The Olympics starts in the end of July, so they've still got 4 months until the Olympics. So it actually works all right for a lot of those guys because they're looking at a base phase now. And I can tell you that the idea of going out and doing big rides day after day after day. They're doing at the moment because I've had a chat to a couple of them. They are worried about being in lockdown and not being able to get the Ks in a month's time. So, yeah, so very much base Ks. They're going to keep training like the Olympics is happening. But this would have been the phase of their program anyway. What it's ruined more for a lot of people, a lot of those international people, is training camps and things like that. A lot of them had training camps overseas planned, maybe some warm-up races overseas, and a lot of those things are just cancelled now. So stay at home, train at home, and we can open up a contentious topic, not saying about the Australian team, but worldwide. I don't know if other people have seen, but there's been a few posts about anti-doping and how there's going to be less testing over the next few months and how testing pretty much won't happen. So we might have a very interesting Olympics if it actually goes ahead with a good 4-month period of not much testing leading into it.
Yeah, I know the UK anti-doping, for one, have really ramped down their testing. I think one of the big problems with testing is the lack of in-competition tests, because that's like forms obviously the bulk of a lot of the testing, and there's no competition, so there's no testing. So it's be interesting. Could be an interesting Tour de France if it goes ahead.
Jesse, final thoughts. Just keep it short and sharp.
Look, if you're into racing, just be smart and plan. At least have some sort of loose plan of what you're doing and when you're going to be hopefully returning back to some racing. But also enjoy what you're doing. Use the time to enjoy a bit of a difference in training and trying out some things that you're not used to.
Pick a new goal. Having something to work towards makes a big difference. And with all this stuff about racing not being on, maybe pick a goal that's not necessarily related to racing, like a wattage goal or something like that might be a really good way to stay motivated.
Yeah, so my final word is going to be, it's all about mindset at the moment. So I reckon change your mindset from trying to get through this to how can you make gains through this, and pick something that you want to work on, and then try and work on that and make yourself a better rider.
We were just sort of chatting a little bit about this kind of format, whether this is something that you guys might be interested in, even as a podcast type thing. I'm sure we can get a little bit more professional and slick in the way we do that, but if that's something you're interested in, let us know. Apart from that, we will see you indoors or outdoors. We don't know yet. See you next week. The moustache in all its glory. Fantastic.
I got moustache wax yesterday, so some fresh moustache wax.
Oh, perfect.
You're so tracky.
Jesus.
Look at you. You're so
It is
tracky.
looking, Chris.